Sword of Damocles. It's the kind of thing that comes up as a crossword puzzle clue, and the kind of thing that might come up in a pub quiz. And what on earth is the Sword of Damocles, and why should you be interested? Well, ultimately, it's about making impossible choices. And sometimes in financial planning, we are presented with impossible choices. And Rachel Reeves has been helping this along recently by making your pension fund liable to inheritance tax, whereas previously it could potentially escape that. And how does that represent the Sword of Damocles, I hear you ask? Well, first and foremost, you're going to use your pension fund to draw an income, and your personal allowances have not gone up. So as your fund grows, more and more of the money you draw out to meet the rising cost of living is likely to attract income tax, and potentially income tax at the higher rate. So what Jeremy Hunt, who actually brought those, there was a previous chancellor who actually brought those changes in, what he's done is created what's called fiscal drag. So the longer we go into the future, the more drag on your returns will come from tax, and particularly as your fund grows, the more likely it's to pay income tax. On the other hand, what you also want to do is you want to preserve your funds. So you want to have a very careful balance between how much you draw and how much tax you pay, and then how much you leave in your fund, because it's got to last you for the rest of your life, which is an imponderable, of course. Then on the other hand, if you're really good at that and you're really prudent with how you draw your money out to keep your tax under control and to preserve your fund, so no matter what happens in life, you've always got plenty of money, you could pop your clogs with an enormous fund that then attracts inheritance tax at 40%. So by being really prudent, you simply create a problem that you then pass on to your potential beneficiaries. So here we are with literally a brilliant example of the Sword of Damocles, and then we've got a seemingly insoluble problem. So that then begs the question, what does one do about it? Well, we can look at really two stages of this. You've got the accumulation phase, where you're building up your retirement funds to be independent of working, and then you've got the point where you start drawing down on them. If we take the first one, it probably implies not relying exclusively on pensions and pension plans for your retirement income. It relies upon probably what's called tax diversification, using a whole range of different tax wrappers with different treatment to mitigate the tax that you're going to be drawing downstream and to control it more effectively. So rather than just use a pension, you might use an individual savings account and a bond as well. If you're in retirement, what does it kind of imply? Well, if you just had a pension fund, probably one of the things you would think about, not necessarily a nice thing to think about, is, well, how long am I likely to live? If you plan to live to, say, 100, which is not unreasonable, maximum human lifespan is about 120, but you'd be going some to get there. Most people hang in there till their mid-80s. So let's be positive and say 100. What you'd actually do is you'd plan to run your money down to zero by about 100. And if you were drawing some more money out and you attracted a little bit more tax, you might also look to be a little bit more aggressive with your tax planning. So there are some vehicles that attract income tax relief. They're called venture capital trusts. The term venture in the venture capital trust acronym should be ringing alarm bells, because you're compensated for taking greater risk with your investments by having some income for tax relief from that money. So while you draw more money out from your pension and pay more income tax, you might divert some of that elsewhere. The other thing you might do is you might take some of the extra money you draw and start gifting it to your beneficiaries in life, in vivo, rather than waiting for it to have accumulated and to pay out to them later on as inheritance tax at a higher rate. So even income tax rates at 20% obviously are lower than inheritance tax at 40%. Little bit of a rock and a hard place if you've just got a pension and you're already in retirement. On the other hand, if you're in retirement and you've done some planning already, you've got some tax diversification, you've got bonds and ISAs, what you do is on an annual basis, review what you've got, review how it's performing and how much you can draw versus your income, and then look to balance the drawings you take from each of your plans to maximize the tax benefits that are available to them. And that's a process that we employ called dynamic spending. If you're in retirement, or decumulation as we call it, then we're already doing that for you every year anyway. But if you're not, and if you're building up to retirement in particular, real focus on tax diversification to avoid problems downstream. And the earlier you start with that, the easier it is to avoid those problems. So there you go. Anyway, so great example of the Sword of Damocles. If that does come up in a pub quiz or in a crossword, you'll know what it is now. And also, you get the points in the pub quiz, and you'll be able to give it a great example of it for a bonus point as well. So, always looking to help you out there, and I hope that did. And on that note, cheers. We'll see you next time.